They called me Mrs. Romano now, a name that echoed through the marble halls of our penthouse like a melody both sweet and suffocating. To the world, I was the picture of elegance, silk dresses, diamond necklaces, champagne at every gala. I had married Luca Romano, the youngest and most powerful mafia boss on the East Coast. At 28, he had rebuilt his family's empire and crowned me as his queen. But behind the designer curtains and polished silver cutlery, the air was heavy. It wasn't fear exactly, but something colder, control. I met Luca when I was 22, just finishing my architecture degree while juggling 2 jobs and trying to keep my father from drinking himself to death. That feels like a different lifetime now, like some poor girl I used to know. Now, I woke up in 1,000 thread count sheets with a man who could start a war with a whisper. I had everything I thought I wanted: security, luxury, even love, in a strange, fractured form. And yet, I couldn't sleep through the night without locking the door. Luca wasn't cruel. In fact, he was careful. Every touch, every glance, every word. It was all calculated to remind me that I belonged to him. His love came wrapped in steel and velvet. And the more he gave, the more invisible chains I felt around my wrists. The only pure thing in my life was Sophia, our daughter, 6 months old, with Luca's piercing gray eyes and my unruly curls. She was laughter in a house made of silence. I lived for her. I endured everything for her. Still, some nights I would stand by the window, watching the city lights, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. One evening, while Luca was out meeting with his inner circle, I walked down to the lobby. I didn't know why. Maybe I just needed air that didn't smell like him. I passed the doorman, nodded to the security guard who watched me like I was the crown jewels, and wandered toward the private mailroom. We had staff to handle it, but a strange impulse told me to go. There, sitting alone on a silver tray, was a single envelope. No stamp, no return address, just my name in slanted handwriting. Natalie. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a photograph, faded but unmistakable. A woman with dark hair and sharp eyes, holding a baby. Me. I had only one photograph of my mother. She had died when I was 4. Car accident, they said. My father, Daniel, never spoke of her. Said it was too painful. But this picture, it was different. Taken somewhere warm, maybe Miami. She was smiling. Alive. On the back, in the same handwriting, were 6 words. The dead never really die, Natalie. I stared at it for a long time. My heart pounded so loudly I thought the walls might hear it. I rushed back to the elevator, clutched the envelope against my chest. When the doors closed, I looked at the security camera and wondered who else was watching me. Luca had eyes everywhere. Back in our suite, Sophia was asleep in her crib. I tucked the photo into a copy of Wuthering Heights, a gift from Luca, who never read fiction, and poured myself a glass of wine. My hands were still shaking. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the baby monitor. I watched the door. I watched the sky turn from black to gray. The next morning, Luca returned. His shirt smelled like cigars and sea wind. He kissed my forehead gently and murmured, "I missed you." I smiled and lied. "I missed you too." As he walked toward the bedroom, his phone buzzed. He frowned, looked at the screen, and tucked it away without answering. "Anything interesting happen while I was gone?" he asked, slipping off his jacket. "No," I said. "Same as always." That was the first lie, but not the last. Days passed. I kept the photo hidden, but it burned in the back of my mind. Who sent it? What did it mean? Was it a message or a threat? Luca became more attentive, which only made me more uneasy. He started asking strange questions. "Do you ever think about your mother?" he asked one night at dinner. I froze. "Sometimes. Not much. I was too young." He nodded slowly. "She was beautiful. Like you." "How do you know that?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He smiled. "Your father showed me pictures. Back when we first met." Another lie. Daniel Cruz never showed anyone anything. He was a broken man, buried in debt and shame. I realized then, Luca knew something. Maybe everything. A week later, Sophia had a doctor's appointment. I insisted on taking her alone, something I rarely did. On the way back, as my driver turned onto 5th Avenue, I saw her. A woman, standing at the crosswalk. Sunglasses, dark coat, hood pulled low. But I knew that face. It was her. My mother. Alive. She looked at me through the glass, and I saw the ghost of my own reflection in her expression. I opened the door, ready to shout, to run, to do something, anything. But the light turned green, and the driver pulled forward. I twisted back in my seat, heart racing, but she was gone. Gone like she had been for 20 years. That night, I didn't mention it to Luca. Instead, I sat in the nursery, watching Sophia sleep. My mother was alive. And if she had come out of hiding, it could only mean one thing. Something was coming. Something darker than anything Luca had ever shown me. And somehow I knew. This time, I wouldn't be able to protect everyone I loved. Not all at once. The face haunted me. Not because I doubted what I saw, but because I didn't. It was her. I had memorized every inch of that face from the one photograph I was allowed to keep as a child. Evelyn Monroe, my mother, declared dead when I was 4. The woman whose absence defined every part of me, every hole, every question, every silent cry. But she had stood on that sidewalk, very much alive. And she had looked right at me. I didn't tell Luca. Not yet. Something in my gut told me to wait. Watch. Listen. That same night, I found a note under Sophia's crib. Folded neatly. No envelope. Just 3 words, written in the same slanted hand as before. Meet me tomorrow. No time. No place. But somehow I understood. The Botanical Garden in Brooklyn. My mother used to take me there. Or so I was told. I hadn't stepped foot inside since I was a child. So the next afternoon, I told Luca I wanted to take Sophia for a walk. Something calm. Just the 2 of us. He hesitated, of course, as he always did when I asked for anything beyond his immediate reach. But he agreed, under one condition: a guard would follow, from a distance. I said yes. We arrived just before sunset. The garden was nearly empty, golden light stretching across manicured lawns and rows of glass greenhouses. Sophia slept in her stroller, her small chest rising and falling like the tide. I wandered past the roses, through the magnolia trees, and then I saw her. She sat on a bench beneath the iron archway covered in ivy, like she'd been there for years, waiting for time to catch up with her. Evelyn Monroe. Older, leaner, with streaks of silver in her hair. But those eyes, green like mine, sharp like a scalpel, were unmistakable. She didn't stand. She just looked at me and said, "Hello, Natalie." My knees wanted to give out, but I stood still. "I thought you were dead," I said. I was. To you. To the world. It had to be that way. You don't get to say that, I snapped. You don't get to just walk back into my life and act like this is some reunion. She sighed, not defensively, not even guiltily. Just tired. I didn't come to justify anything. I came because you're in danger. I laughed, short, bitter. You're 20 years too late. She nodded toward the stroller. She's beautiful. She looks like you did. Don't talk about her, I said sharply. You have no right. She's the reason I came back. I stared at her, struggling to keep my breath even. You're not safe, Natalie. Luca isn't who you think he is. Spare me the warnings, I said. I've lived with him long enough to know exactly what he is. No, she said, her voice turning cold. You know the version of him he wants you to see. The man who buys you silence with gifts and masks control as devotion. I didn't answer. Evelyn looked around, lowered her voice. I worked undercover inside the Romano family for almost 3 years. That's how I met your father. My breath caught. You don't mean Daniel. She shook her head. Your biological father. Javier de Leon. He wasn't just a man. He was the head of one of the most powerful cartels in South America. I felt my stomach twist. You're lying. I wish I were, she said, eyes full of something I couldn't name. Regret, maybe, or sorrow. When I became pregnant with you, everything changed. I tried to run. Daniel helped me disappear. We built a life. I wanted you far from that world. But it found me anyway, I said bitterly. Yes, through Luca. Evelyn reached into her coat and handed me a USB drive. What's this? Everything I know. Every file the FBI has on Luca Romano. The ones they buried to protect him. Why would they protect him? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Because he gave them people more dangerous than himself. He was an informant, once. But then he crossed the line. He killed a federal witness. They had to bury it. You were already involved. I stared at the drive, unable to touch it. I don't care, I said finally. I have a daughter. I can't start over. I can't leave. You can, she said. I've arranged for extraction. Witness protection. You, Sophia, and me. We disappear. Tonight. I looked down at Sophia, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the weight pressing on her mother's shoulders. And if I say no? Then I leave alone, Evelyn said. But you should know something else. She leaned in closer. They've put a hit on Luka. The Russians. Bratva. And when they come for him, they won't spare you or Sophia. I felt cold from the inside out. They know about me. They know everything. I stood there, silent, as the sun dipped below the horizon. Evelyn stood. I'll be at the old ferry terminal. Midnight. If you're not there, I'll assume you've made your choice. Then she was gone. I walked back to the car in a daze. That night, Luka returned late. He kissed me, asked about my day. I lied again. I held Sophia longer than usual before putting her to bed. I watched the shadows outside the window, wondering who was watching back. I opened the USB drive in the study. Password protected. But I didn't try to open it. I just stared at the screen. Because the truth wasn't in a file. It was in my blood. And I was beginning to realize that the woman I'd become might be far closer to Evelyn Monroe than I'd ever wanted to believe. There are moments when time fractures. When the world doesn't slow down, it stops. Completely. And in that silence, something in you either shatters or sharpens. For me, it happened on a Thursday. The morning had started like any other. Luka was gone before sunrise, business in Midtown. I spent the early hours feeding Sophia, walking her around the atrium, watching her giggle at shadows on the ceiling. Around noon, I stepped into the kitchen to warm her bottle. It took 5 minutes, maybe 6. When I came back, her crib was empty. At first, I thought maybe Marta, our housekeeper, had come in and taken her for a walk. But Marta wasn't scheduled until later that day. I checked the hallway, the nursery, the terrace. Nothing. I called her name, screamed it. The panic came fast and thick, choking every breath. My heart wasn't beating. It was detonating inside my chest. That's when I saw it. On the floor, beneath the crib, a small black envelope. Inside was a single note, typed in clean, bold letters. Kill Luka Romano. You have 48 hours. Or your daughter dies. No contact information. No location. Just the message. I collapsed to my knees, the paper shaking in my hands. I called Luka. No answer. I called Evelyn. She picked up after the first ring. She's gone, I said. There was a pause. Then her voice, calm but heavy. Where was she taken from? Our home. They got inside. They wanted you to know. They wanted it personal. They left a note. I whispered. I'm already on my way. 2 hours later, we met in a parking garage beneath an old church in Harlem. Evelyn wore all black, her hair pulled back. She looked like she had stepped out of a war movie. I handed her the note. She read it silently. Salvatore, she said. Victor. She nodded. He's resurfaced. After 10 years. We thought he was dying in Cuba. Why target Luka now? Revenge. But this isn't just about Luka. It's about legacy. Power. You. What do you mean me? You're the connection between two bloodlines, Natalie. Luka's enemies see your daughter as a threat. A symbol. They want to wipe that symbol out. I felt sick. Cold. What do we do? You have a choice, Evelyn said. You kill Luka. Deliver his head to them. They'll return the child. I stared at her, horrified. You're serious. They believe you're close enough to get near him without suspicion. You're the only one they trust to do it. I can't kill him, I said. No matter what he's done. You may have to. I shook my head. There has to be another way. Evelyn leaned in. This is war, Natalie. There's no clean path. Only survival. That night, I returned home. The apartment was too quiet. Luka was in his study, drinking scotch, staring out over the city. He turned when I walked in. Where's Sophia? He asked, frowning. I couldn't speak. I just handed him the note. His face changed. It wasn't fear. It was rage. Victor, he muttered. He crushed the paper in his hand and looked at me. I'm going to kill him. You can't go in blind, I said. He's waiting for that. Luka paced, his voice low and lethal. They took my daughter. They declared war. Then let me help, I said. He looked at me. Really looked at me. You've never asked to be involved in this world. I didn't have to. It came for me anyway. His jaw tightened. Do you trust me? I hesitated. Yes, I said. Another lie. We spent the next 24 hours preparing. Evelyn sent intel. Luka mobilized a team. The plan was simple. Track the messenger, follow the trail, locate Sophia. But they were always one step ahead. No fingerprints. No signals. No demands. Just a countdown. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I sat in the nursery, staring at the empty crib, the silence louder than any scream. On the second night, a new package arrived. A USB drive. On it, a video. 20 seconds long. Sophia. Crying. Alone in a dark room. A voice in the background. 48 hours is generous. Don't test our patience. Lucas smashed the screen with his fist. Blood trickled from his knuckles. He didn't even flinch. I followed him into the hall. We can't do this the usual way, I said. He turned. What do you mean? We need to make them think we've cracked. That I've turned on you. He narrowed his eyes. You're suggesting a setup. I'm suggesting survival. He studied me, then nodded. The plan was risky. We staged a fight. Loud. Violent. I screamed. He yelled. Glass broke. Doors slammed. The staff scattered. Hours later, I left the building in a black coat, a suitcase in hand. Evelyn was waiting in the alley. They bought it, she said. I hope so. We drove to a warehouse outside the city. One of Evelyn's safe houses. Inside, I waited. Then, at 11:17 p.m., the call came. Unknown number. I answered. You're ready to make the trade? The voice asked. Yes. Where? I gave them the location. The Brooklyn docks. Midnight. I hung up. Luca arrived 10 minutes later. Dressed in black. Silent. We exchanged no words. At midnight, we stood under a flickering street lamp near the pier. Fog rolled off the water like smoke. A car pulled up. 2 men stepped out. One held a small bundle. Sophia. I wanted to run. To scream. But I held still. Do it, one of the men said. Prove your loyalty. He handed me a gun. Luca looked at me, eyes steady. If you're going to shoot me, he said, at least look me in the eyes when you do it. I raised the gun. My hands shook. The men tensed. I looked at Sophia, crying, squirming. Then I turned and shot the man holding her. Luca moved instantly, taking down the second. It was chaos. Blood. Screams. Silence. I ran to Sophia, pulled her close, held her against my chest. Luca grabbed me by the arm. We have to go? More are coming. We vanished into the shadows. Later that night, back in the safe house, I sat with Sophia in my arms, rocking her gently. Luca knelt beside me. You didn't have to do that, he said. I did, I replied. Because I don't know what's coming next. But I'll die before I let anyone take her from me again. He looked at me, a flicker of something soft crossing his face. Then he whispered, there's something I need to tell you. About your mother. About your father. I stared at him. And the world, already cracked, began to split once more. The silence after chaos is always the loudest. We stayed at the safe house that night, hidden deep in an industrial zone where no one would think to look. Sophia finally slept, curled against me with her tiny hand tangled in my shirt. I didn't dare move. Not even to blink. I had nearly lost her. I didn't know how to live through that kind of fear twice. Lucas sat in the corner, his knuckles still bandaged, his eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. He hadn't spoken much since the docks. Neither had I. But now, as the first light of dawn crept through the boarded windows, he rose slowly and came to sit across from me. There's something you need to know, he said. I looked at him, exhausted but alert. My body felt hollowed out, but my mind was sharp. He didn't wait for permission. I found out the truth about your parents a year ago. I didn't tell you because I didn't think it mattered. But now it does. I didn't speak. I let him continue. I knew Evelyn wasn't dead. I didn't know where she was, but I knew she had faked her death. What I didn't know, until recently, was who your real father was. I held my breath. He looked down for a second, then met my eyes. Your biological father was Javier de Leon, head of the Leon Syndicate, based in Medellin, one of the most dangerous men I've ever heard of. The name hit me like a wave of ice. I thought he died in a raid years ago, I said. He did. But before that, he had a relationship with Evelyn, long before she joined the FBI. You were born out of that. I stood up, clutching Sophia closer. You're telling me I'm cartel royalty? I'm telling you your bloodline was never simple, Lucas said. I paced the room. Everything inside me felt tilted. That's why they wanted Sophia, I whispered. She's not just your heir, she's mine too. He nodded. To the Russians, to Salvatore, she's a symbol. A threat. The merging of two powerful bloodlines. She represents something dangerous. I couldn't breathe. I sat down, hard, on the edge of the bed. All my life, I said, I thought I was just some poor girl trying to survive. Turns out I was born into this world before I ever chose it. It's in you, Natalie, whether you wanted it or not. I turned to him, voice shaking. And what does that make me? A future queen? A monster? He didn't answer. Maybe because he didn't know. Maybe because I already did. That night, Evelyn returned. She looked tired, her eyes scanning every inch of me and Sophia, checking for bruises, damage, trauma that couldn't be seen. When I told her what Luca had said, she didn't deny it. She sat down beside me and took my hand. "I tried to keep you from this world," she said. "But I failed. Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because I didn't want you to think it defined you. I wanted you to have the chance to build your own identity." "But it does define me," I said, even when I didn't know it. Evelyn looked at Luca across the room, then back at me. "He's not safe, Natalie. He never will be. He saved our daughter," I said. "He didn't have to. He also dragged you into this life." "I walked into it," I replied. Evelyn sighed. "I'm leaving tomorrow. There's still a way out for you. New identities. A new life. Somewhere they can't find you." I looked at her, my own mother, the woman I had mourned for 20 years, who had returned with truths I never asked for. "I can't leave," I said. "Yes, you can. You just have to choose to. I don't know who I am without this." "You're not defined by your blood," she said. "Not his. Not Javier's. Not anyone's." I looked at Sophia, sleeping between us. "She will be." Evelyn stood. "That's why you have to protect her." After she left the room, Lucas stepped forward. "She still hates me," he said quietly. "She's afraid of you." "Are you?" I met his eyes. "Sometimes." He didn't react. Just sat beside me. "I didn't fall in love with you because you were dangerous," I said. "I fell in love with the man who held our daughter like she was made of glass. The man who watched me cry in silence and never asked why. But I don't know if that man is real or just another mask." He was quiet for a long time. "I don't know either," he said. "That honesty did something to me. Broke something open." "What happens now?" I asked. He looked at me like he didn't know the answer. "I've been offered a seat at the table," he said finally. "The summit. 5 families. If I take it, it means full recognition, protection, power. And you want me there." He nodded. "Not as a wife. As a partner. As someone who understands what this world is." I stood, walked to the window. The city lights blinked like stars fallen to earth. "And if I say no?" I asked. "Then you walk away. With Evelyn. With Sophia. I won't stop you." I turned to him. "You wouldn't let me go." "I said I wouldn't stop you," he replied. "That's not the same." The difference lingered in the air like smoke. The next morning, Evelyn left. No goodbyes. Just a note. "There's a flight at midnight. The car will wait for 15 minutes. I hope you get in. But I'll understand if you don't." I folded it and placed it in my jacket. Then I held Sophia close, kissed her forehead, and tried to feel like a mother who still had control over anything at all. By nightfall, I would have to choose. Stay in this world, or vanish from it forever. But no matter which I picked, I knew the truth now. This legacy, it wasn't something I had inherited. It was something I had become. The night felt heavier than usual, like the air itself knew I was standing on the edge of something irreversible. I dressed Sophia slowly, carefully, as if layers of cotton and wool could protect her from what was coming. She cooed softly, unaware of the weight pressing down on every breath I took. The note from Evelyn still sat on the table. Midnight flight. One way. A future rewritten. But only if I chose it. Luca hadn't spoken much since the night before. He had given me space. More space than I expected. Maybe because he knew that anything he said would only push me further away. Or maybe because he didn't want to hear my answer. But now, as I sat on the edge of our bed with Sophia in my arms, he stepped into the room. "It's time," he said. I looked up at him. "For what?" "For whatever you choose." His voice was calm. Not cold. Not resigned. Just honest. "The summit is tonight," he continued. "If I go alone, it's one message. If I bring you and Sophia, it's another." "What kind of message?" "That we're not just surviving. We're building something permanent." "You mean power?" "I mean legacy." I stood up slowly, walked past him to the window. Below, the city shimmered, bright and indifferent. "Do you ever wonder what we could have been if we met under different circumstances?" I asked. "All the time," he said. I turned to face him. "You said you wouldn't stop me." He nodded. "I meant it." "You love me." "I do." "Then let me go." Silence stretched between us. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a keycard. "For the car. It's waiting out back. It will take you to the airstrip." I didn't take it. Instead, I looked at Sophia, asleep against my shoulder, her face so peaceful it almost broke me. "She deserves more than this," I whispered. "She does," he said. I brushed a tear from her cheek. And so do you, he added, quieter this time. I walked to the table, took the note from Evelyn, folded it carefully. Will they let you walk away if I go? I asked. No, he said, but I'll handle it. I turned toward the door. He didn't follow. Downstairs, the car was waiting, just like Evelyn had promised. The driver didn't speak. He opened the door, loaded my bag, and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a passport, a new name, and 2 plane tickets, 1 adult, 1 infant. The city passed by in a blur as we drove toward the private airstrip. At 11:52 p.m., we pulled up near the hangar. The jet's lights were on. The stairs lowered. Evelyn stood at the base of the aircraft, coat pulled tight, wind pushing her hair back. She looked older than I remembered. Or maybe I was finally seeing her as she was, not as the ghost I had carried for 20 years. I stepped out of the car, holding Sophia close. Evelyn said nothing, just opened her arms. We stood there, staring at each other. Then I spoke. Did you ever regret it? Every day, she said. But I'd do it again to keep you safe. I'm not that little girl anymore. I know. Neither is Sophia. Evelyn looked at her, then back at me. She'll have a life without violence. Without fear. You both can. I looked at the plane, the stairs, the open door. Then I looked at the horizon. Back toward the city. Back toward Luca. Toward everything I hated and everything I loved. I'm sorry, I said softly. Evelyn's face didn't change. I knew you wouldn't come. I shook my head. I did come, but not to leave. She reached out, placed her hand on Sophia's head. Then promised me something. What? Raise her to know her worth. Not her bloodline. Not her father's empire. Her own strength. I will. Evelyn stepped back. She climbed the stairs without another word. At exactly midnight, the jet lifted off. I stood there, watching until the lights disappeared. Back in the car, the driver didn't ask where to go. He just drove. When I returned to the penthouse, Luca was on the balcony, overlooking the city like he always did when he needed to remember he was still in control. He turned when I walked in. I said nothing. I simply placed Sophia in his arms. And for the first time in weeks, he cried. Later that night, we dressed for the summit. I wore black, not for mourning, but for armor. As we descended the marble staircase, hand in hand, I felt the finality of the moment settle into my bones. We were no longer who we used to be. We were no longer victims of circumstance. We were something else entirely. At the entrance, Luca stopped me. If you walk through that door, he said, there's no turning back. I know, I replied. And you're sure? No, I said. But I'm still going. And together, we stepped into the room. 5 families. 20 seats. 1,000 eyes. Silence as we entered. Then, one by one, they stood. And the future began. Epilogue. Months later, a reporter from an underground journal would write a piece titled The Queen of Shadows. It would speculate about Natalie Cruz, about her sudden rise in the Romano family, about the whispered rumors that she wasn't just Luca's wife, but his successor. No one could confirm any of it. No one knew where she had come from, only that she had arrived, and that once she did, nothing in the underworld would ever be the same.